Okay, so let's unpack this incredible stack of source material you've shared with us. We are diving deep today into, well, this really rich tapestry of traditional beliefs from South India, looking specifically at the documented practices around omens, magic, rituals, and sacrifices.
That's right. And what makes these sources, I think, particularly fascinating is they aren't just, theoretical discussions about these belief systems. They're observations
Hmm.
recorded by various individuals, capturing specific practices and ideas as they actually encountered them in different communities, different regions.
Exactly, like field notes, almost. Snapshots from the past.
Precisely.
So our mission for this deep dive is really to explore these documented beliefs, understand the specific details laid out in these sources, how people sought to, well, predict the future, maybe influence events, connect with what they saw as the unseen world, but only based on what's presented here.
Yeah, it's about sticking to the records.
It's a journey into the practical side of belief, really, as recorded by these observers.
It gives you that ground level view,
Yeah.
how these systems were lived, how they were practiced day to day.
Okay, so let's jump right in then. Starting with how people looked for meaning in the world around them, reading the signs life presented.
Well, the sources highlight just incredible detail and the significance people attach to everyday things,
Mm.
particularly the behavior of animals.
Yeah, and what struck me going through this stuff was the sheer specificity. It's like the Kauravas, right? Seeking an omen from a goat quivering before, say, heading out on an expedition.
Mm.
The sources mention they put a very liberal interpretation on even the slightest movement. But if the goat also urinated,
Ah, yes.
apparently that was the absolute best sign you could possibly get.
The gold standard of goat omens.
Right. And despite the Kaurava's reputation, which wasn't always stellar in these accounts, they apparently made it a point of honor to pay for that goat.
Right. Which adds another layer, doesn't it? It's not just taking, it's a transaction.
Yeah. And in a different context, related to ritual, the Nukalama sacrifice documented at Coconada that offers another specific animal sign.
Yes, the acceptance sign. The sacrifice was considered accepted if the mouth of the sacrificed had opened when water was poured over it.
Opened. Wow. Okay. That's incredibly precise criteria for interpreting divine will, isn't it?
It really is. And beyond these single incidents, the sources give us actual lists. Good and bad animal omens.
Like in Malabar.
Exactly. In Malabar, seeing crows, pigeons, or deer moving in a certain way, good.
Right.
But a cat crossing your path or seeing animals fighting, definitely bad news.
Seems pretty clear cut for them.
And the Palayas of Travancore, another community documented, they had their own detailed lists too. Seeing another Palaya or a native Christian or an Izuva, that's another local community carrying a vessel, that was lucky.
Okay.
Seeing a cow behind you or a boat loaded with rice axe, also good. But conversely, yeah, the cat crossing.
There's the cat again.
Always the cat. Animal fights, meeting someone carrying a bundle of clothes, or people with steel instruments, all seen as very negative omens for them.
That cat crossing omen seems, well, pretty widespread, doesn't it? The sources really emphasize seeing a cat right when you wake up was considered extremely unlucky.
Hugely unlucky.
There are even common sayings noted like, I faced the cat this morning, or did you see a cat this morning? Used when things went wrong. It really shows how deeply this belief got into the language.
And it wasn't just like a vague superstition. It had real-world consequences, as documented.
Yeah.
Parians, for example, they'd apparently just abandon marriage plans if a cat or a specific bird crossed their path.
Seriously, abandon the whole plan.
That's what the sources say. And there's even that anecdote about a European police officer who refused to start searching for a criminal after a cat crossed his path.
Wow.
It vividly illustrates how these beliefs weren't just confined to specific groups and could really impact practical matters, even for, well, colonial officials.
Okay, so beyond the usual suspects like cats, what about other animals? The Brahmani kite.
Ah, yes, the kite. That sighting was often seen as highly auspicious, especially if it was carrying something or if you saw it on a Sunday morning. The sources describe people even throwing meat or butter up to it.
Trying to encourage the good luck, maybe?
Seems like it, yeah. And lizards, too. Lizard chirping was noted as significant.
How so?
Well, experts were believed to interpret their chirps to predict things like the likelihood of a snake bite, and even whether someone would survive it.
Just from a chirp.
Apparently. And also where a lizard fell on your body was significant. Right side versus left side, different meanings.
Okay. And snakes themselves? Seeing them?
The snakes, dead or alive, could definitely be omens. A bruised snake was believed to be a precursor to calamity. And one really fascinating detail is the description of pious Malayalis treating a killed snake with, like, full cremation solemnities.
You're kidding. For a snake?
No. Covering it with silk, burning it in sandalwood,
Yeah.
even hiring a Brahmin to observe pollution rules and perform funeral rites for it.
That's incredible devotion, or maybe fear.
Probably a bit of both. Dogs had their omens, too, often related to predicting theft or gain.
Right, like the number of claws.
Yeah, the number of visible claws or specific action. A dog scratching a wall meant thieves were coming. Making a hole meant your cattle would be stolen. But if a dog approached with, say, shoe leather, that predicted success.
Right.
Approaching with flesh meant gain.
So really specific actions linked to specific outcomes.
Very specific.
Okay, so it wasn't just animals. Omens were also found in, like, objects and events beyond the animal kingdom. What you saw first thing in the morning, you mentioned that.
Yes, absolutely crucial. According to the sources, waking up and seeing your wife's face, or the lines on your hand.
Lines on your hand, really?
Yeah, or a woman smeared with sandal paste. All considered a very good start to the day.
Okay, interesting. And meeting certain people.
That could also be a positive sign. Meeting a virgin, Brahmins, Rajas, or just generally, respectable men.
Got it. And objects. There must have been a list.
Oh, there was a whole list of things seen as good omens. White flowers, a white yak tail, white cloth, white horse, a chank shell.
Lots of white things.
Seems so. Flagstaffs, turbans, triumphal arches, fruitful soil, a burning fire, appealing food and drink, carts with men, cows, mares, or bulls with ropes tied to their necks, palanquins, even specific birds singing sweetly.
Wow, that list is quite extensive and very specific again.
It is, and the sources also mention specific rituals where objects provided omens, like those Idaean death ceremonies where they watched a thread tied to a post shake before killing a cock.
Right, the thread shaking was the sign.
Exactly, and a particularly fascinating belief among the holiers, another community documented. They believed that others simply entering their house brought bad luck.
Just
entering. The sources describe these specific rituals to neutralize it, like tearing the intruder's cloth, tying salt in it, and basically turning them out. It shows how easily just interaction with outsiders could be seen as magically harmful.
And that story about the shopkeepers, that really shows how these beliefs were woven into daily life, even impacting, like, administration.
Oh, the round-bottom measures, yeah.
They refused to use them because they wouldn't stand up on their own, right? Believing it brought bad luck.
Exactly. And they even tried using soda water bottle rings to make them stand. People would find these practical workarounds to try and appease what they saw as supernatural forces, even in commerce.
It really underscores that point, doesn't it? That governing or interacting effectively meant you had to understand the local superstition, even about something as mundane as a measuring pot.
You really did. You couldn't just ignore it.
Even food preparation could yield omens, you said.
Yes. Watching how boiled food, specifically pongol, that's a type of rice dish offered to the deity Polarama, how it bubbled over, that was eagerly watched for signs of good or evil fortune.
Okay, so moving from external signs to, like, physical ones,
Yeah,
within one's own body.
Yeah. The sources mention Al-Biruni's notes on Hindu customs, including the surprising detail that crepitus ventris gas basically was considered a good omen.
Really?
Yeah, while sneezing was bad. Kind of counterintuitive, maybe, but that's what's recorded.
Huh. And what about breath and presence? You mentioned purity concerns.
Right. A courtier in Travancore would cover his mouth so his breath wouldn't pollute superiors, and low-caste men at temples wore bandages over their mouths and noses. It shows how physical presence, even just breath, could be perceived as carrying supernatural or social weight, pollution.
Makes sense in that context.
Yeah.
And the Idaeans watching the thread shake, that's another physical observation within a ritual.
It is. And another really powerful physical sign documented comes from the firewalking ordeal.
Yo, yeah. What was the sign there?
The sources say that if any hairs on your feet were singed after walking through the fire pit, that was taken as a definite sign of approaching ill fortune or even death. The physical outcome was the divine judgment.
Wow, high stakes.
Very. And dream interpretation was another huge area for seeking omens.
Right. What kind of dreams were significant?
Dreaming of Brahmins, kings, flowers, jewels, women, or a looking glass was believed to cure sickness. Snake bites in the shade or scorpion stings meant wealth was coming.
Interesting. So not always bad.
Not always.
Yeah.
And dreaming of a snake bite itself was believed to confer proof against future actual snake bites, like a kind of magical inoculation through the dream.
That's fascinating. Protection through a symbolic encounter.
Exactly. And if you dreamt of a cobra, specifically, It was believed your wife or a near relative had conceived.
Wow. Very specific again.
Always specific.
Yeah.
And a curious, maybe slightly poignant belief mentioned is that Hindu wives thought telling their husband's name, even accidentally in a dream, would bring misfortune.
Even in a dream. That shows how deep these beliefs went, doesn't it? Into the subconscious.
It really does. And finally, a girl attaining puberty. That whole event was surrounded by omens related to the specific day of the week and the month it happened.
Influencing her future.
Yeah, believed to influence her future prosperity, the nature of her children, her happiness, her longevity. Specific months were linked to specific outcomes. Bayasi meant prosperity, Ani meant male issue, Masi happiness, Margali well-behaved children, Punguni long life, or many children. Her transition was seen as this critical marker for the whole family's future.
So, okay, if reading signs was one way people sought understanding, the next step, as documented here, was actively seeking answers through divination and prediction.
Exactly. This section in the sources covers rituals specifically designed to get a response, elicit the prediction from the divine or unseen forces, moving from just watching to actively asking.
Like the pongal bubbling over, we touched on that.
Yes, watching the boiled rice offered to Palarama for a good or evil omen. That's one form of ritual divination.
And the Kuruvakarans counting seeds.
Right. Before a festival, the headman piles up seeds, mentally forecasts if most heaps will be odd or even. If the actual count matches his forecast, that's divine approval for the festival. A very clear yes-no mechanism.
Simple but effective, if you believe it.
And the Devanga weavers had even more varied rituals for seeking festival omens. They'd try to balance a sword on its point.
Seriously, balance a sword.
Yeah, or watch if a lime fruit placed near an idol would fall spontaneously, or see if the cut ends of a bundle of beetle leaves would reunite.
Yeah.
The success or failure of these seemingly simple physical acts carried huge meaning about divine favor.
Amazing. And house building in Malabar, using leaves and coconut juice.
Yes, carpenters apparently foretold the house's luck, how long it would stand, if another would be built there,
Yeah.
just by watching how beetle leaves floated in coconut juice, reading destiny in swirling leaves.
And the Karava women worried about their husbands off on criminal expeditions.
Right, they'd dip a stick in oil, watch if it floated or sank in water to predict their safety. And if it sank, the sources say 2 women would apparently set out immediately to find the men. The stakes were incredibly high.
Definitely. So divination also involved selecting objects, maybe by chance?
Yeah, like the Kamalans appointing a headman or choosing marriage partners. They'd use colored bouquets, white for auspicious, red for the reverse, or slips of paper with names. And a child would select one with their eyes closed.
Bringing in an element of innocence or fate.
Exactly. Letting chance, or perhaps the divine through the child, guide the choice.
Okay. And beyond these predictive rituals, the sources talk about judicial ordeals, right? Where the divine was thought to intervene directly.
Yes, like the boiling oil ordeal. The winner was the one who could pick a coin from boiling oil without significant injury. The loser had to pay expenses. Divine judgment through physical trial. And for the Kuruvakarans, proving innocence meant carrying red-hot iron while taking 7 strides. If you could do it without being burned, you were innocent. These ordeals are really powerful examples of appealing directly to the supernatural for judgment.
Definitely putting your faith and flesh on the line.
Quite literally.
The sources also document inspired prediction, where individuals were believed to act as channels for prophecy.
Yeah, often entering altered states. We saw the experts interpreting lizard chirping for snakebite outcomes, that specific knowledge used predictively.
But more dramatic examples.
Oh yes. The Karanika ceremony among the Kurubas is striking. A man would shiver, believed to be possessed by the god Siva, and utter a cryptic sentence. Something like, thunder struck the sky, or they have risen against the white ants.
And people interpreted that.
Exactly. Others would interpret that phrase as a rain prophecy for the coming year. So prophecy delivered in symbolic language needing interpretation.
And there were professional diviners too.
Absolutely. Played a big role. The Paluvas used their pot drum and songs specifically to propitiate snake gods, leading to ceremonies like Pamban Tulao, often involving spirit possession and prophecy.
Okay.
Budubudikes were a whole class of mendicant diviners. And the Korava, or Yerukala women fortune tellers. The sources note they were often quite clever at extracting information before giving their predictions, asking leading questions.
Oh, a classic technique. Yeruko, ama, yeruku.
It is prophecy, mother. It is prophecy.
Okay.
Exactly. Male soothsayers, called gadi, did more elaborate rituals. bathing using colors, drumming, singing, invoking deities. They'd sometimes act inspired, possessed, almost uttering demands like, "You have neglected me, propitiate me adequately, or ruin is yours."
Claiming to speak for the deity directly?
Yes, implying the deity's displeasure needed immediate attention. And Valians and Kalans, other communities mentioned, used a specific tree, the Odina Wudio tree, or even parts of their houses for devil worship and divination. The diviner would fall into a frenzy, uttering cryptic phrases predicting fortune or misfortune.
Okay. And what about detecting truth or theft? More practical magic.
Yes, specific methods are described. There's the grain sifting ceremony, a sieve, maybe manipulated or just observed, turning a certain way indicated the culprit.
How did that work?
The mechanism isn't fully detailed, but the movement was the key sign. And then there's the rice chewing method.
That sounded intense.
It does. Suspected people chew consecrated rice. If they couldn't chew it into a paste, or if their gums bled, that was attributed to fear or a guilty conscience suppressing saliva.
Yeah.
And that revealed the thief.
So it relies entirely on the psychological effect.
As described, yes. Belief in fear producing a physical reaction interpreted as supernatural judgment.
Okay, so moving from reading signs and seeking predictions, let's get into beliefs about actively shaping events. Protecting oneself using magical means, charms, talismans, that kind of thing.
Right, protection was clearly a huge concern, leading to a really wide variety of documented practices. We saw the holier example earlier, tying salt in torn cloth to neutralize bad luck from someone entering the house. A symbolic act of containment.
And adding things to oil.
Yeah, in days considered astrologically unlucky, people would add specific roots, earth, or ashes to oil for anointing themselves, believing it created a protective barrier or averted evil influence.
And that idea about dreaming of a snake bite giving immunity.
Yes, perceived magical protection derived from an experience, even a symbolic one in a dream. Like the dream encounter somehow used up the potential harm.
Interesting. Animals themselves could carry magic too, right? Or need magical attention.
Definitely. Horses and cattle had specific markings believed to bring luck or misfortune. A mark called Divumani on horses was considered super lucky, able to overrule even evil stars. Spotted cattle were also seen as very lucky.
And bad marks too.
Oh yes, marks like Cortigat on the hind legs meant horses wouldn't sell. Badi on the forearms predicted the owner would be jailed, and then the Vani, sort of teat-like projections on a male animal's sheath, were unlucky. The specific location was crucial.
Wow, so specific. And birds causing trouble.
Certain bird behaviors needed magical intervention. If an owl or a crow entered a house, the sources say it required vacating the house entirely and performing expensive purification ceremonies, sometimes ruinously expensive for poorer families.
Just from a bird flying in?
Yes. The belief was the bird's presence itself could magically contaminate the space. And bathing with clothes on, propitiating Brahmins that was required in Malabar if a crow soiled you on certain days.
Okay.
And the ritual feeding of crows with rice balls, pindums, of memorials is mentioned. If the crows refused to eat, that meant the ceremony wasn't done right, or the dead person's wishes weren't satisfied. You had to keep doing things until they ate.
Connecting the living's actions to the satisfaction of the dead through the crows.
Exactly. And apparently there was also a belief you could attract sparrows by making the sound of counting rupees.
That's kind of weirdly specific, linking money sounds to birds.
It is a fascinating blend of maybe older beliefs with newer concepts like money.
And for snake bites, besides the omens, there were actual antidotes mentioned.
Yes. Specific plants and roots were documented as antidotes. A peculiar wood, Nagamalika roots, Norville ver leaves. These were seen as having inherent magical or protective properties against the venom.
And the jungle Yanides, fearless of cobras.
Apparently due to a charm. And some are documented as actually swallowing the poison sac for protection. A really drastic physical act linked to perceived magical immunity.
Whoa, okay.
And there's that curious belief about curing a snakebite victim by performing a mock funeral with a straw effigy.
How would that work?
The idea was this ritual would fool the snake, causing it to come down from a palmyra palm where it was believed to be watching or residing, and this somehow led to the victim's recovery. It's pure sympathetic magic trying to deceive the source of harm.
Wow. And the Brahmini lizard bite being instantly poisonous, even though the author notes no actual cases.
Yeah, that illustrates how strong beliefs could persist, even without the empirical evidence presented in the sources. The fear was real.
And magical oil from a green tree snake.
Well, a legend, yeah. Believed to cause a lamp carrier to appear covered in snakes. Belief in transformative magic linked to specific animal parts.
And protecting livestock. Buffalo horns.
Yes, a piece of wild buffalo horn buried in the village ground was believed to avert or cure cattle disease. Belief in protective power residing in parts of strong animals.
Makes sense. And tiger whiskers being poison.
Widely believed, leading to the practice of singeing them off immediately after a tiger was killed, to neutralize their perceived magical or harmful property before it could be used against someone.
Okay. Children, being vulnerable, must have had lots of charms.
Oh, loads of them documented. A dried tortoise foot, a crocodile tooth, specifically against a mythical water elephant, apparently, wooden tiger claws, joints from a black scorpion tail to ward off illness, often animal-derived, suggesting a belief in transferring the animal's protective qualities.
And talismans worn.
On the neck or waist, yeah. Things like graveyard earth.
Graveyard earth. Eek.
Yeah. Or bark from a tree where someone committed suicide. A cord with 21 knots. A figure of Hanuman with Kabbalistic letters, drawing on different sources of power of the dead, specific trees, numbers, deities.
And during eclipses.
Wearing a piece of arca plant root was documented as protective then, as eclipses were often seen as dangerous times.
Moon-shaped amulets.
Crescents, yeah. Worn specifically by children against the evil eye, linking the moon to protection from harmful gazes.
And even a Mohammedan practice noted. Tying a rupee.
Yes, tying a vow of a rupee or an anna and a quarter for poorer folk in red cloth around the arm for health or recovery. Shows how similar practices of making vows and using symbolic objects crossed religious lines.
And a servant using a charm under a pillow.
To regain a master's goodwill, yeah. Highlights the use of magic in personal relationships or situations of dependency.
The sharp charmer for pearl divers is interesting too. Hereditary power.
Believed to be hereditary, yes. Even held by a Roman Catholic at one point, according to the source. His presence was key.
But
The sources also note a fishery was abandoned after more bites occurred, despite a wise woman being employed later. Shows the practical outcome didn't always match the belief, even as documented.
right. Reality sometimes intrudes.
And as an illustration of public credulity, that rumor about chromed-hand boots causing leprosy, blood poisoning, eyesight failure,
Yeah, that was mentioned.
it shows how quickly fears could attach to new or foreign objects based on perceived, dangerous, unseen properties.
Which leads us straight into the evil eye, doesn't it? That pervasive belief that just looking at someone with envy or even admiration could cause harm.
Exactly, a huge concern documented here. A high-caste Brahmin objecting to low-caste people seeing them eat is given as an example. Linked in the source to this idea of transmissible personality, your essence or influence transferred through sight.
Even a friend's shadow falling on food caused trouble.
That's one anecdote. And the author recounts being seen as having an evil eye by the odds, the earthwork community. They refused to fire a kiln because of him, and excommunicate a woman who touched a pot he touched. Shows the real social disruption these beliefs caused.
Definitely. And ill luck following if a great man noticed you.
Widely believed. A specific house fire example is given where the fire happened hours after the author had noticed the house, the implication being his attention itself was harmful.
So how did people protect themselves? Lots of rituals.
Loads of rituals documented, often involving waving something potent or symbolic in front of the person, child, or house rice, a gourd with turmeric and lime, colored water, a coconut, incense, rice balls with wicks.
Waving it around.
Yeah, and then often leaving it at crossroads. The idea was to catch or divert the harmful gaze.
Makes sense. And mothers blaming visits for a child's illness.
Yes, attributing a child's loss of appetite to an evil person's visit. Remedies involve dust from the suspect's foot, or street dust, cotton seeds, and chilies whirled around the child.
Chilies, how did that work?
You'd burn the chilies on the hearth afterwards. If they smelled strongly when burning, the evil eye had been averted. If they didn't smell,
Uh-oh.
that was right, the ritual hadn't worked. And if it didn't work, the suspect might be roundly accused and never admitted again. Real social consequences.
So people would try to avoid attracting the evil eye, making kids look ugly.
Yeah, common practice. Putting black dots or lampblack on children's faces to prevent harm from admiration. And if someone praised your stuff, it was considered good practice to frighten them, maybe shout, "Look out, snake!" just to neutralize that potentially harmful gaze.
Wow. And objects outside houses, scarecrows and things.
Deliberately placed to catch the eye first. Doll-like creatures, scarecrows, figures made of bricks and mortar, sometimes monstrous Priapi figures, pots or fruits smeared with lime and dots, even rag offerings on trees, sometimes called Mr. Rags in the sources. Anything to distract the gaze.
Metal charms, too.
Metal cylinder charms worn against it. And Yantram's magic diagrams whispered over a string and tied on.
This widespread belief, all these methods, It really shows how constant the fear of external, unseen negative influence was, doesn't it? And the lengths people went to protect themselves.
It absolutely dominated daily concerns in many ways, according to these accounts.
Okay, let's explore the ceremonies performed to appease deities, gain favor, fulfill promises, the whole realm of rituals and sacrifices, which the sources cover extensively.
Right. Animal sacrifice was, well, very common as documented. Goats sacrificed to Ganga Devi, the river goddess.
Yeah.
A pig sacrificed to Engalaman, with that rather um, strange and disturbing detail.
The blood-soaked rice.
Yes, giving the pig rice soaked in its own blood to eat just before decapitation. A very graphic detail.
Yeah. And the Mariamma Temple Festival. Lots of animals left alive.
Yes, huge numbers. Sheep, goats, fowls, pigeons, parrots, cows, calves brought, presented, but then sold off afterwards. Suggests the offering wasn't always immediate slaughter, but sometimes presentation followed by the animals entering the economy.
So the act of offering was the point sometimes?
It seems so in that case. The Khois would sacrifice a cow or pig to Bhima, specifically for rain. Cockfighting after agricultural races, the Kambla, was done to propitiate demons. And a particularly graphic vow documented is offering a pregnant goat by stabbing it through the womb.
Oof. That's intense.
It is a ritual of profound symbolic or actual sacrifice.
So seeking divine approval or help went beyond sacrifice too, like that snake bite ordeal.
Yes, the judicial ordeal where an accused thrusts their hand into a mantle with a cobra. A dramatic way to appeal for divine judgment on guilt or innocence.
Terrifying. And snake stones. Worshipping those.
Very significant, especially during the Nagara Panchami festival. Offerings of milk, curds, ghee, coconut water. And these stones were especially sought out by people without male children, highlighting a specific need addressed through this worship.
A direct appeal for fertility.
Seems like it. And snake groves, like Manardalzala in Travancore, were major centers. The sources mention a specific Nambutiri family that's a high-caste Brahmin group as the hereditary guardians. People seeking help would look into an oil vessel held by the eldest woman of the family to get directions on how to satisfy the serpents.
Divination linked to appeasement.
Exactly. And the Paluvas, with their pot drums and songs, they had a specific role in propitiating snake gods, leading to ceremonies like Pamban Tulal. And the sources note that ritual impurity, like a menstruating female touching the drum, was believed to stop the deity from manifesting.
Yeah.
Shows the huge importance of ritual purity.
Okay. What about snakes in anthills?
Also seen as sacred dwellings. Offerings were made there, milk, cold rice, fruit, and applying earth from the anthill to a troublesome body part for healing. Cutting children's first hair near anthills as offerings is mentioned too.
Linking life cycle rituals to these sacred spots.
Yes. And the anthill is noted as a favorite cobra dwelling, And, the legendary burial place of Valmiki, the poet, from whom the Boyas claim descent. So it connects snakes, sacred sites, lineage. Lingayats, a Shaivite community, were documented worshipping earth snake images collected from anthills.
Wow, so many connections. And the Subramania shrine at Palani, what offerings there?
Cutting hair after a father's death, a mourning ritual combined with pilgrimage. Carrying kavadis, those portable shrines with offerings like milk or fish, was a common vow. Miniature silver kavadis and crowns were also offered, and some pilgrims observed a vow of silence. Lots of different ways to show devotion.
And vows weren't just at Hindu shrines.
No, vows were made at numerous shrines, including, as noted, the shrine of a Mohammedan saint, Miran of Nagur. Devotional practices definitely crossed religious boundaries.
Naming children after deities.
A very common way to fulfill vows made in exchange for boons, especially for having children.
And begging for Tirumala, or keeping a coin box.
Yes. Specific vows documented, begging door to door for money to give to the Tirumala temple, a major pilgrimage site, or keeping a little coin box for misfortunes, with the contents eventually sent to the shrine. Ways ordinary people connected their daily struggles or vows to these big sacred sites.
The Tulavaram ceremony, weighing oneself.
Against gold coins or other valuables, silver, sugar candy, date fruits, as a vow for boons like getting a son or just for general well-being, practiced across different social levels, even by the Maharajas of Travancore.
And settling debts with a goddess.
A unique custom documented at Pulambadi, the goddess Kulanthal Aman. A creditor writes their claim on palm leaves, vows a portion to the goddess if paid, hangs the scroll at the temple. The goddess becomes a kind of divine mediator or guarantor in financial disputes.
Amazing, carrying pots of fire.
A dramatic vow after severe illness. a painful act of penance or gratitude.
Wearing margosa leaves.
A significant vow or custom at certain festivals, particularly for Mariamma and village goddesses, likely linked to Margosa's perceived protective or healing properties.
And votive offerings, like models of things.
Yes, carrying images and objects to temples. Wooden buffaloes, human figures, animals, even models of guns and pickaxes to a tribal deity. Figures of the 7 virgins offered if you wanted female offspring. Figures of the right sex offered after recovery from illness. A direct link between the offering and the desired outcome.
Offering bells at tree.
Described as a superstitious sacrifice or offering, yeah. Trees often seen as homes for spirits or deities, like the Benjanas doing it at a certain tree or at the Malama tree.
And silver model boats.
Presented to a shrine on a hill overlooking a harbor after successful voyages. Suggests propitiating a deity or spirit linked to the sea or that location for safe passage.
Okay, agriculture was obviously huge. Lots of ceremonies there.
Deeply intertwined, yes. The Vishu festival, Malayalam New Year, marked the start of the agricultural year. Huge importance placed on the first thing seen the kani for good luck. Gift giving, laying the decorated spade furrow.
All setting the tone for the year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Chedatakam ceremony in November, after transplanting rice, was an offering to Muni represented by a block of wood specifically to wipe out the thin from killing insects and reptiles during cultivation.
Acknowledging the kind of moral cost of farming.
Seems like it. A ritual balancing act. The Karagas had their sitting under the dew ceremony before agricultural races, singing, offering toddy and pudding, scattering manure, plowing, all linked to ritual preparation, and cockfighting after the races to propitiate demons.
Demons of healed, maybe.
Possibly associated with land or harvest. The Badaga seed sowing ceremony involved a Kurumba, another community, doing part of the ritual on an auspicious day, scattering grain while saying do, do. Then a new pot of water or milk ceremony saying Nerathubita.
Specific words and actions.
Always. The Koda seed sowing ceremony had specific rules for the priest. No meat, avoiding wife pollution, milking cows where the milk shouldn't turn sour. That was an omen. Sowing Reiji, offering new grain, hanging rice straw cords. Purity and auspicious signs were key.
Dedicating stones. Ornamenting tools.
Yes, dedicating a stone to Kodalama required specific offerings before cultivation. Seed drills were ornamented with figures like Nandi the bull, Hanuman the lingam, decorated with margosa leaves, invoking divine protection and fertility even on the tools themselves.
And rainmaking. Crucial, obviously.
Absolutely critical. Lots of documented methods. Mud images of women with grindstones plus sacrifices, sacrificing a cow or pig to Bina, processions with an image of Varuna, the rain god, pouring water on a lingam, and the malas tying a frog to a mortar and singing to it, "Mother frog, pour rain by pots full."
Sympathetic magic again. Asking the frog to bring water.
Classic sympathetic magic.
Okay, this brings us to a more challenging topic documented in the sources. Beliefs and practices involving human sacrifice. And just to be clear, we're reporting impartially on what's documented in the source material itself, as historical accounts of beliefs and alleged practices, not endorsing them.
Absolutely. That's crucial context. The sources mention the legend of Arjuna sacrificing his son Aravan for Pandava success in the Mahabharata. And the Katandavar festival is noted as reenacting this sacrifice, suggesting its weight in mythology and ritual.
And beliefs about stopping floods or helping construction.
Yes, a belief that throwing someone into a tank breach would stop the damage, linked to the story of Musalama, a girl allegedly buried to save a tank. And panic noted about needing to sacrifice virgins during embankment construction, a fear or belief tied to major public works.
Jars with remains.
Believed in some areas to contain remains of virgins allegedly sacrificed on estate boundaries, or used for burying old women alive. Beliefs linking property boundaries may be disposing of the vulnerable.
And the Valama custom, arranging a mala marriage first.
Explained in the sources by a story, a mala man allowing himself to be sacrificed for hidden treasure. The custom is presented as gratitude rooted in that alleged historical sacrifice.
And people being advised to sacrifice someone for treasure.
The sources recount instances where individuals were allegedly advised by astrologers or magicians to do this. Examples given. A native on the West Coast, a Brahmin girl in Vellore, a native in Bellary who murdered his own child, allegedly believing the god would revive the son after the sacrifice and grant wealth.
That's horrific, linking treasure, magic in that belief.
It is. A related belief, maybe less severe, was that finding treasure required sacrificing a cock to the guardian goddess, or the finder would be struck down, linked to an iguana story.
So a lesser sacrifice might suffice sometimes.
Sometimes. Pinos were believed to rifle European graves for treasure. linking treasure, death, maybe disrespect for foreign graves.
An exorcist requiring human sacrifice.
A disturbing account describes this alleged event for a devil-possessed woman. Victim drugged, decapitated, blood mixed with rice offered, body hacked, thrown in a pond,
Yeah.
linking possession, exorcism, and alleged ritual murder.
And the Karavas burying someone up to the neck.
Documented as an alleged sacrifice for a goddess. Victim drugged, buried, cow dung and lamp on head, cattle driven over him. This victim was believed to become a troubled spirit, Munisvara, creating malevolent spirits through ritual violence.
Bishop Whitehead's suggestion about burying pigs.
He suggested, as cited in the sources, that burying pigs alive against cattle disease might be a survival, a symbolic substitution related to earlier practices of infanticide or human sacrifice.
Interesting theory. The Malayan ceremony. Self-mutilation.
Yes, to propitiate demons. Required self-mutilation, smearing blood or a paste representing blood and smallpox pustules. Self-harm and symbolic representation of affliction or sacrifice. A cock sometimes killed in a pit, too.
Evidence in Coog. Calling out Alama.
Yes, evidence noted of human sacrifices to village goddesses, Gramadavadas, with people calling out Alama, meaning a man, O mother, during the offering, directly naming the sacrifice type.
Artisans believing a temple car needed it.
Believed it required human sacrifice to move initially. A legend tells of a magician sacrificing his pregnant daughter, reportedly brought back to life. Later, artisans allegedly bought a boy, offering a child's head equivalent. Eventually, a woman sacrificing herself and her fetus, linking vital projects, belief in needing life force, and maybe changing practices or legends over time.
And the merriest sacrifice among the Khans.
Yes, described in the sources, sometimes involving effigies, like elephant heads on posts. The methods described for the actual human sacrifice were brutal hacking, dissecting alive, and that chant linking tears to rain. As the tears stream from thine eyes, so may the rain pour down in August.
Powerful sympathetic magic again. Human suffering for natural fertility.
Like incredibly powerful imagery. Later, a langur monkey, Irukama potu, was sometimes substituted, hoping to trick the goddess, perhaps.
Even buffalo sacrifice wasn't simple.
Carried risk, yeah. The animal sometimes killed as tormentors before being subdued, and conflicts arose over possessing the flesh from sacrifices, suggesting the offering itself held power or value.
And that belief about strangers being killed in Bastar.
A chilling belief mentioned that strangers were quietly killed for a bloodthirsty goddess certainly would have deterred outsiders, whether factual or not.
Okay, let's turn to the perceived power of magic and its consequences, especially harmful magic, sorcery, which the sources also detail.
Right. Belief in harmful magic, sorcery, was clearly widespread and deeply feared. Pilisuniam involved incantations by sorcerers aimed at killing people, potentially using parts of a fetus in the ritual. The sources mention a case where suspects were found with palm leaf books full of these harmful mantrams or spells.
And Odi, another feared power.
Yes, believed to destroy people using pilatelum, an oil supposedly extracted from a fetus. An elaborate, gruesome ritual for obtaining the fetus is described, luring a pregnant woman out, cutting at the body, burning pieces, boiling a piece, a panin performing puja, the consequences, believed to be death or madness.
Just horrific rituals described, Madanakriyas, killing rituals.
Literally killing rituals, yeah. Sacrifices to demons believed to cause an enemy's death. Often involved incantations written on palm leaves, buried near the enemy's house or well. A sorcerer would then need to be called in to dig up and destroy the charm to counteract it.
And using personal items. Hair, saliva.
Methods described using things linked to the target, earth from where they urinated, saliva, hair, put inside a coconut with nails and buried, symbolically linking the person to the harm.
Wax dolls too, effigy magic.
Yes, documented. Buried with needles stuck in them. Damage to the doll believed to transfer to the victim. Classic effigy magic.
A really detailed method with a plant stem.
Yes, using a stem, maybe Strychnus nuxvonica or Cajun with a figure drawn on it, sticking thorns into the limbs while repeating a mantram, putting the victim's name and star into a navel hole on the figure, hanging it in smoke, combining plant magic, effigy, astrological timing.
Wow, and lead effigies.
Another described method, lead effigy of the person, victim's name, star, charm put inside, rituals performed, cock's head cut off, effigy and sorcerers submerge themselves, sorcerer whistles, mustn't look back, believed to work within a set time like 21 days.
So precise, and simpler charms, like for a boil.
A charm on lead reportedly used just to cause a boil or tumor in someone's foot, focusing the harmful magic.
And the mud image of the adulterous woman.
A striking form of maybe magical punishment or condemnation, making a mud image, poking thorns in its eyes, throwing it outside the village, symbolic blinding and expulsion, a public magical act against transgression.
Belief in transformation was also there, people becoming animals.
Yes. The Khans believed a person's spirit could wander as a tiger at night, causing illness if it ate your soul. Spiritual transformation and attack.
And Panyans becoming bulls or dogs.
Believed to transform into animals, specifically a bull or dog, to assault women, using a hollow bamboo and ritual at night, linking sorcery to specific harmful acts and perceived shape-shifting.
Was there a ritual to achieve transformation?
One is described, yeah, to get the disguise of a tiger or other animal. Using specific plants, a mantram, tiger whiskers, silk, intense focus on the desired animal. Suggests specific recipes and mental discipline were thought to enable it.
Chedipe. Prostitute applied to sorceresses.
Yes, the term links perceived moral failing with magical ability and danger in those accounts.
So sorcery was often the explanation for misfortune.
Very often, yes, provided a framework. Among the Khois, every death was believed caused by a sorcerer instigated by an enemy. Old men would beat the body trying to find the cause, sometimes claiming to find grains in the back, evidence of magical attack.
Illness, too. Blamed on sorcery.
Frequently attributed to a demoness instigated by an envious enemy. A magician called in to identify and counteract it.
Wizards transplanting trees.
Believed to have unusual powers like that, yeah. Transplanting trees overnight to punish those who displeased them. Magic manipulated the physical environment in strange ways.
And accusations leading to violence. The Kurumbas.
Tragically, yes. Documented murder of Kurumbas because one failed to cure a child. Belief in their power to harm led to deadly reprisal when they failed to heal.
And the sorcerer burned on the pyre.
Yes, after a Komati woman's death. His body burned on her pyre. The sources note that intoxication and superstitious feeling were presented in court and held to mitigate the punishment. Shows how deeply held beliefs were recognized, even if judged differently, by the legal system.
Beliefs about wizards throwing stones.
Persisted, yeah. Believed they caused illness, stole cattle, brought misfortune by throwing stones or setting fire to thatch. Naming a specific Nabutiri family was believed to drive them away. An old woman even complained to the police about a Sudra woman throwing stones due to enmity framing a mundane conflict in magical terms.
Magic in other contexts. Necromancy. Love charms.
Practices mentioned using body parts.
Yeah.
Eye of Aloris, brain of a baby, catamenial blood. Eye of Loris also used in preparation to kidnap or seduce women. Tail of a chameleon as a love charm. Belief in power residing in specific, sometimes taboo substances.
The love filter with baby brains. And burying infants.
A belief noted, yes. Linked to the practice among some classes of burying firstborn male infants near or within the house. Not just mourning, but specifically to prevent sorcerers using the body for magic, or extracting an essence karuvu from the brain. Cutting off a finger if a firstborn died. Same reason. Render the body magically useless.
Protecting the dead from sorcerers.
Exactly. And after any death, actions taken to prevent the ghost returning. Placing objects, pot of dung water, broomstick, firebrand at crossroads or in front of the house. Burning camphor at a crossroad for a dead pariah man. Guiding the spirit or purifying the space.
Sorcerers hired to kill, as you got to.
Believed to be hired, yes. Invoking gods or demons. Elaborate rituals. Green tree, figures, goat sacrifice, arak, limes, coconuts.
Getting rid of demonic possession.
Ceremonies described, Yuraskotuka, placing blood, chunam, turmeric on a leaf at a distant spot. Belief was the first person to see it becomes possessed, releasing the original person. Transferring possession through ritual.
And magic for finding treasure.
Documented too. Digging where an iguana slept its location, indicating treasure. Sacrificing a cock to appease a guardian spirit.
This detailed look at magic. Harmful, protective, whatever. It really reveals a world where unseen forces were just constantly at play, right? Actively manipulated or defended against using these specific formulas, objects, ritual.
Absolutely. A constant negotiation with the unseen woven into the fabric of life is described in these sources.
Okay. Transitioning from direct magic and omens, let's look at the more formal ways of predicting the future and guiding decisions. Astrology and prophecy from specific experts.
Right, like the astrologers, the Kenyans. They seem to have played an incredibly pervasive, essential role in daily life, as documented here.
From birth to death.
But pretty much. Their services needed right from birth casting a horoscope to advising on the cause of calamities, illness, misfortune.
And their answers were cautious. The Putra Putri example.
Yes, often cautious, designed to cover possibilities. Putra Putri could mean no son but a daughter, or no daughter but a son, depending on what happened, a built-in ambiguity.
Covering their bases.
You could say that. And they were indispensable for almost any important occasion, starting journeys, new businesses, giving loans, signing deeds, even personal things like shaving your head.
Shaving your head needed an astrologer.
Apparently so, according to these accounts. And certainly for big life events. Births, marriages, tonsure, thread investiture, starting education. No major decision or transition without consulting them.
How did they do it? Cowrie shells.
Their methods are described involving arranging cowrie shells in a diagram, moving them while quoting astrological authority, explaining the results. They even worship the cowries themselves, treating their tools as sacred.
Another account mentions pouring cowrie.
Yes, pouring them out, selecting the largest to represent planets, working out planetary positions in the diagram to interpret results. A concrete system applied to prediction.
Okay. And beyond the Kanyans, other prophetic figures.
Yes, mentioned operating in these societies. Some Mulukurumbas, a tribal group, were said to have a specific gift of prophecy, initiated in an art called Kotevekal.
Sikunapakshis, omen birds.
A class of beggars, yeah, went on expeditions using a frog skin drum, interpreting signs or giving predictions as they went.
Voodoo boobs.
Also, mendicant diviners or beggars.
Yes.
Noted in the sources for demanding clothes over rice, suggesting they knew their market value, perhaps.
The Karava women fortune tellers again?
Yes, Yuruko, Ama, Yuruku, and their skill at extracting information before predicting. Practical skill combined with the diviner role.
And the male soothsayers. The Gade. Chewing cakes from boiling oil.
Yes, that very striking image. Performing intense rituals, chewing cakes from boiling oil, rubbing oil on their heads, giving oracular replies after sucking goat blood. Demonstrates the physical intensity practitioners sometimes underwent to gain prophetic power.
Okay, pulling back now. Looking at this vast collection of observations, omens, magic, ritual, sacrifices in South India, based purely on these specific sources, what does it all tell us? What are the underlying threads?
Well, I think the first thing that really jumps out is the immense diversity and specificity. Across different communities, regions, it wasn't one monolithic system. It was this rich, localized tapestry where the same broad categories, omens, magic, sacrifice, manifested in countless unique ways, down to particular animal behaviors, objects used, specific ritual steps.
Right, and these beliefs clearly served incredibly vital functions in people's lives, as documented.
Absolutely. They were concrete ways people tried to understand, maybe gain some measure of control over
Yeah.
a world that was often unpredictable, dangerous even. Seeking protection from harm, ensuring prosperity in farming or other ventures, navigating the huge uncertainties of life, death, relationships.
They also played a role in maintaining social order, didn't they? Sometimes through fear, like the evil eye or witchcraft accusations, or through prescribed roles and exclusions in rituals.
Definitely. And we see concepts like sympathetic magic popping up again and again.
It affects.
Yeah. Or a part standing for the whole. Examples like the Khan chant linking the victim's tears to rain, the Malayan blood ceremony representing affliction, using personal items for harmful magic. That underlying logic appears frequently.
But it's crucial to remember, as we said, these sources are records of beliefs and practices, as observed often by outsiders.
Exactly. They aren't necessarily assertions of magical efficacy. The sources themselves sometimes note conflicting accounts, or moments where the observer expresses skepticism, like the Brahmini lizard bite being instantly poisonous, or that rumor about chrome tanning.
Right. And we saw practical outcomes that didn't align with belief. The shark charmer fishery failing despite him, the murder trials where magical beliefs were presented but judged differently, treasure hunts advised by magic that didn't pan out as expected in the accounts.
So what we have is this documentation of a world where these incredibly complex, diverse belief systems were deeply integrated into daily life, influencing decisions big and small, providing frameworks for understanding misfortune and seeking help, but always seen through the eyes and maybe biases of those recording them, sometimes highlighting that tension between deeply held belief and, well, observable reality.
So we've taken a really deep dive into a world where, well, almost anything, every animal, object, dream, action could hold profound meaning, where rituals and magic were seen as tangible tools for protection and influence against perceived unseen forces, and where the line between belief and perceived reality was just profoundly different from what many of us might experience today.
And understanding these historical and cultural perspectives, just as they are documented in these specific records, it offers us a valuable window, I think, into the ingenuity, the anxieties, the complex reasoning behind human attempts to navigate existence across time and place.
So as you reflect on this deep dive, Maybe consider how our own attempts to find meaning or exert control or even seek luck in the modern world, how they might echo these ancient human desires, even if the forms they take, interpreting data points, seeking therapy, following horoscopes are dramatically different. What unseen forces or patterns do we look for today?